Welcome back, everybody, to the A2J Podcast with your hosts, Jaden, Jason, and Aaron. Today, we're going to be having a discussion on VAR. For those of you who don't know, it's video assistant referee in soccer. So, boys, any thoughts?
Yeah, it's a great question. Before we get into the weeds of it, let's talk about what VAR can and can't do. It can only review four different types of decisions. That would be goals and the plays that lead directly to the shot, penalty decisions, red card decisions, or a mistaken identity in awarding a card, which is probably the least likely of the bunch. But that's what that's supposed to be used for. Jaden, what do you think? What is your overall quick 1 minute pitch take on what VAR is like?
So, I think VAR is. It was meant to be brought in as the perfect solution to refereeing, because obviously referees with a naked eye, you can't really see everything. Even with offsides, they'll go back later and say, "Oh yeah, by the way, that was offside," blah blah blah. But this was supposed to be the one thing that fixes all the mistakes. However, we've seen in the season where they're making good decisions, overturning refereeing decisions that maybe aren't the case. Just one example that sticks out to my mind is Connor Cody's dive against Liverpool, where the referee gave a pen, but
Yeah.
VAR overturned it because nobody made contact. He just dove. But then there's some instances where I think the application of VAR can be used better, and the referees that are conducting the VAR checks should be doing better. One instance that sticks out is Paul Pogba tripping over himself, and they still gave the penalty to United. So I think that it will never, obviously refereeing will never be perfect because there's so many different perspectives that go into refereeing. But I think that it just needs to be more consistent.
Yeah, that's a very fair take, and I 100% agree with everything you said there. I think for me, just to add to that, I think some really good applications of VAR are being used really well, and I think offsides are like a big one. It's really hard, naked eye, real time to actually decide whether something's offside or not. So it really helps out there. But I think there's still some things they need to iron out. Like I don't really know what an offside is anymore. Like based on where are we drawing the line, like when are they freezing the frame? There's a lot of things going on there. So that's one thing that I'm a little bit scared about with VAR. And you know what? Overall, this isn't really a fair criticism because there's nothing you can really do about it. But it's very frustrating as a fan to be watching. Your team scores a goal and you can't even be happy. You can't even be celebrating because you're not sure if VAR is going to take it back for a weird,
You
1
gotta
centimeter
wait for the
offside
VAR
or
check.
something. Yeah, exactly.
Because the width of your freaking elbow.
Exactly. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Like I overall like the system, but I think there's still some issues, and it does take away from the game enjoyment a little bit. What do you think, Aaron?
Honestly, I agree with both those points. Jaden makes a great point. It came in as a way to solve everything, but we kind of ignored the root of the issue, which is referees, especially in England, but just in general, referees need to be held more accountable. They need to be more clear with their decision making, and there needs to be some level of transparency in that, and consistency I think is the biggest issue. Like VAR from one week to another, you don't know how they're going to decide an offside. You don't know how they're going to decide a penalty, a foul, a certain card. There's no way to know. And they need to make some kind of, I guess, maybe ground rules or base rules where this is kind of how it is, and here is where the referee's opinion can come into play. Because if it's a clear referee opinion, and then you hear the referee say, in my opinion, this is why I gave it, I think we can live with that as fans. But having the objectivity and then the subjectivity, but with no explanation, I can't live with that. It's hard to say, oh, this week it hits me on the arm, but next week, oh, that's handball, but this week, no, it's fine because this part of your shoulder. And like the Connor Cody example for specifics, he dives, and they overturn the penalty. Great. But also, there's a clear rule. Yes, a dive is a yellow card. So where's the consistency? Because if it was the opposite end and they gave the dive right away, he would definitely get a yellow. So it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, no, that's another bunch of fair points there. Aaron, sorry, go.
All right, Jaden. So, well, we gave our basic opinion, but like, you have any specific examples that you kind of like come to mind when you think about VAR and why it's good, why it's bad, whatever?
So, like I said, the real root of the issue is the referees. But I think one of the like standout examples for me was that Paul Pogba one, because realistically, in the clip, he's tripping over himself. In my mind, that doesn't constitute a red card, or not a red card, sorry, a penalty. Jackson said earlier he doesn't think that constitutes a penalty. Aaron, I don't know if you think that it constitutes a penalty, but to me, if you're tripping over yourself with minimal contact from the Villa defender, that's not a penalty.
I think for a penalty, for such a big thing, a clear goal scoring opportunity, I think there needs to be a little bit more contact. And that's just me from playing soccer.
All this does is just add fuel to the Bruno Fernandes fire, man. That's not good. It's not a good look for the rest of the league.
Although he is one good penalty scorer, I'll give him that.
How many goals he's scoring if they don't get all those penalties?
Dude, that was a soft penalty call. There's like a minutia, like tiny little minute bit of contact between the defender and Pogba, and that's probably because Pogba swings his leg at the defender's leg by accident. They're beside each other, and then he trips over his own legs. That's a nonsense decision, and goes to show, to your guys' point, this is the subjectivity, right? VAR is not able to help the referee. The VAR gives the referee the best opportunity to make their decision.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it comes down to the referee's decision and their subjectivity, and that's really the issue that a lot of fans have problems with, right?
Yep, I agree 100%.
Yeah, that's a really good case study. You sent it to me just before recording this video, and I've never seen it before, and that was like,
it's just
as
like
a defender, you
as
hate
a
to see
soccer
that.
player, it's like, how do you give that? Like,
You hate to see that. Like real time, full speed. How does the ref look at that and be like, "Oh, yeah, that's a pen"?
Like if that went on a Sunday afternoon, I'd be livid.
Maybe in full speed, you're thinking, oh, maybe they like wrestled, their legs wrestled each other a little bit. So like it does happen a little bit where their legs get tangled up, and it is pen because the ball gets like a clear advantage gets taken away. But in that case where he's hitting himself, no man. And I think English referees don't get called to the screen as often as other referees. I watched one Spanish game, and the referee literally got called to the screen about 4 times.
But the downside of that, to what Justin was saying, it takes away from the fans.
The fan point, yeah, that's exactly.
I mean,
balance is very hard to achieve. Very hard to achieve.
Yeah.
Justin, you got any examples?
I can go my example.
Yeah,
I got a couple examples, but I'll stick to one that happened recently at the time of filming this episode, and it upset me. It really speaks to like the fan
experience,
the fan frustration and upsettedness, and that was Erling Haaland. Okay.
Yep.
It was Erling Haaland in the Champions League versus Sevilla. This is the second leg versus Sevilla when he scores an amazing goal. Absolutely bulldozes the defender. Defender tries to come in and body him, literally bounces off. Tight angle, right in beside the post. He roofs it right over the keeper, right in the back of the net. Amazing goal. And they VAR checked it for a foul, and they said they disallowed the goal. And I was very, very surprised they disallowed it. This is a defender bouncing off an attacker, and they disallowed it as a foul. But this is where I think there's an issue, because the referee now decides, that might be a little bit of an iffy call. Let me look back a minute and a half for a play that happened way before, not even attached to this play. I'm going to VAR check that. Okay?
Okay, I didn't know this.
They VAR check Haaland. I didn't even bat my eyes at this play, but Haaland gets a little bit of a shirt tug and goes down in the box.
So they give him a penalty.
Okay? And they give him a penalty. So it kind of seems to me like, why are we doing this double VAR? Maybe it's what we're supposed to be doing. I don't really know. It was very frustrating to watch at the very least as a fan. Because now they award a penalty. Haaland gets robbed of his penalty by a save from the goalkeeper. They then VAR check to see if the goalkeeper is on his line or not.
Oh my.
The goalkeeper steps off his line a split second before Haaland touches the ball. And they make him do the penalty again. And then Haaland scores.
Are you realizing the mental things that they had to do to make that all work?
Exactly. And the players are upset at this point. They're jawing off at each other. They literally chase Haaland.
I saw that.
Hilarious. Like, just absolute. It was amazing. But guys, like, literally just give the goal then at that point. Like, I don't know. It was like the original foul to me did not make any sense. And then they're using a VAR to go back on a previous incident that I don't even think anyone was really upset about, and then awarding a penalty and then awarding a penalty again
was this all in one situation? Like there was no.
This is all one check, and then the second check when the keeper came off his line, and that was very frustrating to watch as a fan.
See, that goes back to the other point where you need to just have accountability. Like if the first thing you made a mistake and you called the goal off when it shouldn't have been, just be like, my bad, I made a mistake, it's a goal. Why you got to do all these extra steps? Just doesn't make any sense.
Exactly. To me, what it seemed like the ref made this call after looking at VAR and said it's no goal, and he was like, oh shit, maybe his teammates were kind of like, I don't know about that, man. It doesn't really look like that much of a foul. He deserved that. It was an amazing goal, so he deserved a goal in that instance. Okay, so I could see why the referee's like, okay, let's look back and see if he deserved a penalty back then. Try to even out the odds a little bit.
Yeah.
It was weird and frustrating as a fan. I didn't like it. Maybe it was a correct way to use VAR. I don't know. I didn't like it. That's all I'm saying. As a fan, very frustrating to watch.
Yeah, that'd be frustrating. And I know. Like even a little while ago, in the United and Southampton game, they won like 9-0, and at this point, it's like they're winning 7-0 or something. There's like 3 minutes left, and Martial gets tripped in the box, and the guy gets a red card, straight red card. So the first issue was what happened to the double jeopardy rule, where you either give a penalty or you give a red card. You don't give both. So they completely ignored that with no explanation of why they ignored that rule, which is my biggest problem.
So penalty
with
and straight red.
Penalty and straight
penalty
red.
And second yellow. Straight red. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was a straight red because there was a clear goal scoring opportunity. And then further to that, it's 7-0, and Martial kind of like tells the defender he's going off like, yeah, that wasn't a pen. And when you watch the slow replay, Martial's already tumbling by the time that they make incidental contact. So anyone watching that as a soccer player, you're like, okay, if he's going to fall down anyways, this contact has no effect on that play. It should be no call. Just keep going. Because soccer is a contact sport at the end of the day. I think we forget that with all these nitty-gritty calls. At the end of the day, they're going to touch each other. That's part of the game. Yeah. And it's like,
you need to watch the Holland clip because it's exactly the same thing.
Yeah, I'm going to have to rewatch that afterwards. But it's just like, it's just that whole situation kind of like it threw me off. Like, you guys don't clarify anything. It's like, as a fan, it sucks.
Yeah. It seems like a lot of the beef we have is not really with VAR as much as it is with inconsistencies in the rules and how the refs are applying them. So maybe that speaks to the validity or invalidity of VAR. What do you think, Jaden?
Yeah, I said in my take, consistency is key. But when you're making all these decisions, I'm speaking mostly based on the Premier League because I see these happen a lot in the Premier League, and Premier League is the league I watch the most out of all the leagues. But for 1 week, like, you see they call offside on this play, and the next week you see onside on this play, and then you find out later it was the exact same ref in the VAR spot.
Yeah, but okay, Jade, what would you do to fix that though? Like, well, how would you fix this problem?
I mean, I guess like the only thing you can do to fix the problem, realistically, is at the end of the season, all the presidents of the 20 clubs and Premier League officials of the FA get involved in a meeting like they always do, and it gets brought up like, hey, listen, the referees in this scenario have not been
let me put it like this. If today you had sole discretion, was one thing you would do to fix VAR or make it better?
I think just you got to train the referees behind VAR better, because that's the only, if what we want is consistency, right? That's the only way you can get consistency, because at the end of the day, it's Justin's perspective versus my perspective versus yours perspective, right? Because even in this, like, we've all grown up in different eras of soccer, right? Now we see players fishing a lot for fouls because of VAR, and just because that's how players tend to be. 10 years ago, you don't see players fishing that much for fouls because they wouldn't be given as much.
Yeah, that's very true.
So, and going back to these refs, because they're a lot older in age, they come from different eras of understanding the game, so their perspectives are all different. Maybe just the only thing you can really do is just bringing them into a meeting all together and say, listen, this is where you have been inconsistent. This is where you got to cut this down. But even then, you're just changing somebody's perspective, which is already in itself hard to do.
Yeah, that makes sense. And like I said, it seems like our beef's not really with VAR in this case. So that's a fair point, though. I agree. For me, a little bit more specific, but kind of on the same vein, I like that you bring up offsides, because that's where I'm a little bit more upset with, because you see these offsides where there's players like on the line and it's very, very tight, and this is where VAR should be less subjective.
Yeah.
Right? Because we have a freeze frame, we have a line that we're supposed to be placing that's perfectly straight. There shouldn't be questions as long as the rules are ironed out correctly.
100%.
But I've seen instances where people are like, oh, his ankle is keeping the guy on side, which I think, yeah, sure, fine. But then there's instances where a player's like leaning over into a sprint. Yeah. And they're drawing the line down from the shoulder, or they're drawing the line down from the hip, or they're taking where the foot is placed. So for me, it's like let's actually iron this out. I don't know what the actual rule is. I didn't even bother looking it up because I know that's not being followed completely because I'm seeing different things all the time, right? Let's really iron this out, and let's make the line at the shoulder. Let's make the line at the hip. Let's make the line where the foot is placed. But we need to figure this out because it's really upsetting to watch when sometimes it's being called offside and sometimes it's being called onside.
I think also
that's
to
my
your
biggest
point,
beef.
I agree with the offside. I think part of that offside problem is the whole purpose of the offside was to prevent the attacker from getting an unfair advantage. And I think when you're drawing those lines, a lot of the issues aren't when it's separate, but when the lines start kind of touching each other, that's when the issues come because you don't know who's on, who's off. And I think at that point, if the lines are touching each other, there's clearly no distinct advantage for the attacker. Like the lines are touching, at that point it's kind of a you gotta kind of figure
Attacker's
it out.
Bias.
Well, no,
bias.
But even as easy, like maybe it's a little bit of attacker's bias, but just for the game in general, like if you can't clearly define it, I think maybe not in the favor of the attacker, but whatever the call on the field was, stick with that. If they called it off originally, stick with it. If they called it on originally, stick with that if the lines are touching. That's how I would do
I got two other things to say. Number one is actually one thing that what Jasmine was saying reminded me of is handballs. Aaron, I don't know if you remember at the start of the season, handballs were going crazy. And then the FA actually met with all the referees saying, listen, we got to do something about this. And the hand call rule has been eased down a little bit, where before if your ball touched the hand, even if it was accidental,
it was bad. It was bad at some point.
Like, I really like what they did there. That was how it's supposed to be done. Yeah,
there's instances where the ball was like somebody was touching the ball in their defensive end, they go on a counterattack and they score, but the goal was ruled out because it accidentally brushed off of somebody's hand, and then that got fixed.
Yeah, I don't know about the Prem, but in the Bundesliga and in the Champions League that I've been watching more recently, like they've done a good job with the handball situation. They completely dismissed when it's just a random ball to hand sort of situation, or if it's like the hands are close together. They really only want to give a handball if it's someone extending their hand in an odd position and hitting the ball, or like maybe purposely hitting the ball with their hand. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
they've done a good job.
But I mean, I think my biggest thing, for VAR, I think the referees, outside of being betterly trained and just being held accountable after the fact, which I guess is kind of hard because they don't want to put all that pressure on the referees. It's a very hard job, I'll be honest. But I think clarity is the key thing. I think the Australian League uses that, where if you're going to have this subjective thing, explain why me as Aaron, the referee of this game, is deciding that. I know all the rules.
Kind of like NBA.
Yeah, like you know the rules, I know the rules. My interpretation of the rules, let me explain it, and then we can live with that to an extent. Like if you disagree with the referee on his subjective opinion, you can disagree, but at the end of the day you realize it's subjective, so there is going to be that difference of opinion. But without any explanation, it's kind of like you just feel hard done by as a fan, on top of all this waiting and all this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thinking to the NBA, whenever a coach's challenge, or like even you see like sometimes like let's say like a player complains about a foul, they're willing to go back to the screen and just look over the foul.
Yeah.
Right. If it's like a close game situation, and then after they'll get on the headset, they'll explain to everybody, call given, blah blah blah. And in football too, Justin, Aaron has probably seen this. I'm not sure if you've seen this, Justin. If there's a flag, they'll explain the flag.
Yes.
They'll explain why there's a flag, and then what they also have in football. It was just introduced in the NBA a few seasons ago, but what they've had for a while in football is they have coaches challenges. So your coach can challenge the call, and then they'll explain as to why it has been overturned or it has, it's being agreed with, basically. Then that's when the referees will go and check the monitors, and their replay centers will check into it and everything.
Yeah.
So do you guys think that VAR is being overused, underused, used just right? What do you guys think?
Honestly, I think VAR is it's not overused or underused. It's being used when it's needed, but I think it's just being used all wrong. Like it could be much more efficient and effective all around, top to bottom.
Well, it's being used for like Justin said earlier in the episode, like for in those instances, goals, penalties, red cards, and then whatever the mistaken identity thing was, which it never happens, but in the odd case that it does.
I mean, I remember a very big game. It was like an Arsenal game where I think Oxlade-Chamberlain got sent off instead of like Kieran Gibbs or something like that. It was
and they can't take it back.
Yeah, that was like one of the only things I remember. But yeah, continue.
Yeah, but even then, that's back then.
Yeah.
But like I don't like same thing as Aaron said. It's not being underused. It's not being overused. But I think the application of it needs to be changed in order to make it better.
I think in the end, we all agree with VAR, the concept. I think it just, there's some tweaks here and there. And you know what, honestly, even as a Liverpool fan, it hurts to say, but like, it was never going to fix and solve everything immediately. It's a learning process. It's going to take time, just with any new change, any new rules, everything. So I think we got to give a little bit leeway for the next couple of years while they're trying to kind of iron some of these problems out. Like what they did with the handball this year. They acted quickly. It's not perfect yet, but it's much better than it was at the beginning of the year. So
much better.
I think we can all agree on there. VAR is a work in progress.
Yeah, I think overall it's contributed. It's made the game better. It's helped the referees. It's a good thing to have in your toolbox. And like you said, I think it's in a good trajectory overall. Of course, not perfect, work in progress. What can you say?
It'll get better over time.
We've definitely danced on both sides of is VAR good or bad.
I think we kind of convinced ourselves a little bit about it's not that bad.
yeah.
But
it's just frustrating, right?
Sometimes. As a fan, it's very frustrating. But of course, that's just our opinion. So you guys at home, I'm sure this is a very divisive topic. So please have some comments, send us some questions, what you think. And honestly, if you want to yell at us for our opinions, please do. We more than happy to accept those kind of criticisms.
I'll fight you in the comments.
Yeah, for sure. We're very active. We talk to each other in the comments, honestly. So feel free to join us.
If you're a Varchester United fan, don't even bring us your opinions.
We've lost all the Man U fans already, guys.
Yeah,
we don't want to hear from you guys.
Honestly, if one of you guys, if you're a United fan and you want to join us on the podcast to defend your opinion, send me a message and let's do it. We're Liverpool fans. Justin's unbiased Bayern Munich fan. Let's have that debate. I would love to. But in the meantime, it's been from A2J Podcast and from us to you. Thank you for joining us on another episode. And we're looking forward to see you next time. Like, comment, and subscribe.